Good morning everyone and welcome to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Today we're working on our Azure project and today we're working on our last block. We have today block number 10, Borrow and Lend. And here I'm going to show you the the diagram of this block. It looks very complicated, but it's actually a pretty easy block. It's 4 blocks that are all the same, that are just turned in different directions, and that makes up the block. And as it happens, I have 3 of those made, and we're working on the 4th one now. And as you can see, this is the same block here and here, just in different fabrics. And for this particular block, I chose to go with 4 of our fabrics from this project. So join me right after this and we'll get started, and we'll get this one together pretty quick, I think. Okay, back to Borrow and Lend, block number 10. And as I said, this is just 4 small little subunits or blocks, small blocks that come together to make that larger block. So we've got 4 of these, and like I said, I'm making it out of 4 of the fabrics for this project. So we're on this block, and there are 2 pieces in this little subunit. There's a side piece, and then there's another piece that is the small portions, a larger portion, and then that's joined up with this to get us our block. Now you could choose to do all of these little triangles in different colors and have it be very colorful, but in looking at this, I kind of thought that that distracted from the pattern to make it really complicated, because if you did that, I don't think you would see that they were 4 of the same blocks. And for me, that kind of was that whole idea of borrow and lend, how one could just substitute for the other very easily. So let's get started on it. I've already put together this side. Now if you look at this, this is one side, and now we're working on this other piece. And I already have 2 of the pieces on here, the little white piece in the very corner and then this middle piece here. And we're going to add this piece on the side, and we're going to do this using the same techniques we've used for every other block. We're going to sew on that stitch line with a very short stitch so it's easy to tear the paper off, and we make sure that that stitch holds very well. Now for me, that's a 1.8 on my machine, and this one was already trimmed to the right size, so we're just going to fold it over and pin it in place. If you had an ironing board or iron handy or a little small iron, you could iron as you go, but I've learned that most of these you're able to pin it down long enough to put that next piece of fabric on, and that's really all you need to do. So let's turn this back, make sure that I'm in the camera range here, and then we're going to trim it off. I always find it's neater and easier to work with if you do trim. It will make those seams much nicer in the end. And now for this piece, we just need a solid piece of material, and I have that here. And we're just going to sew that down. Now, I want to make sure that my white piece underneath that stays in place. So I'm just going to put a little pin there. This fabric that I'm using for this particular block is somewhat directional, so that will help it stay in place if we can hold that blue fabric down as well. That was super easy and super fast. And I just want to make sure that you can see what's going on now. When we turn it, There we go. So now all we really need to do is put the basting stitch around the edge to hold it, and then we're going to trim it. And I'm going to start, you could do either one first, but I find that doing the basting stitch makes sure that I have the trim correct, whereas starting with that trim, I could cut it just a little too short and then have to start over. Oops, I've got it on the wrong stitch length. So we're just going to start it over, and I do keep it on a really long stitch for this so it's easy to come out. So we'll have that one part that we'll probably take it out before we sew it together. Okay, so now we've got our basting stitch in all the way around, and I'm going to trim. You could trim with the rotary cutter or a pair of scissors. And I like to use my utility scissors because I'm cutting through paper as well. Okay, super easy, super fast. Let's get rid of these little scraps here. Okay, so now we are ready to put this together, and it's going to go together just like that. So we use our same technique, using the pins to get it into position. Easy peasy. I'm going to put a clip to hold it together. Back to our really short stitch. And I am sewing into the seam allowance, so I don't have to worry about back stitching. Okay, so this came out pretty well. The next step I would take would be to take this paper in the middle out. And I'm going to do that just a little bit. And I'm also going to come over here where I put this basting stitch in. That was really the little short stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. So we are not going to have to worry with that later. It will be easier to do it now than later. It's really easy when you're trying to take those tiny, tiny stitches out to gouge your fabric and create a problem. So I'd rather take it out now. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this out on the seam allowance. We're taking those basting stitches out where we sewed it together, and that will allow us to pull that paper out. And anything that makes that easier is worth a few minutes to do. Okay, so we should be able now pull that paper out. There we go. I love it when it starts coming out and you can hear that ripping sound. It just sounds so satisfying. Okay, so that's out. And now we're going to sew this together. And we're just going to straightforward, same way we've been doing it. These two colors to me were very similar, so I put them in diagonal fashion. And then I'm just going to flip this over. Okay, that's in there. Put our clips on, because the clips are really what's holding it. The pins were to position it. And we're going to check our alignment one more time. Looks like we're good. All right, we're going to stitch that. And of course, we're going to be back to that short stitch. Okay, we've got that done. And we're going to take that out. Okay. And I'm going to try to take a little bit of that paper out, just because it will help it lay flat. And I always find that when I'm tearing this paper out, I'll be real honest with you, the more in a hurry I am, the more anxious I am about getting it done, the harder it seems like it is to get it out. And when I'm sitting here and I'm not in a hurry and I'm not filming, it comes out just like nothing. It's just so easy. So that's just a little tip for you. Well, no, that's got a few extra stitches in there I didn't realize were there. And we've got some paper up under here, and I'm going to be sure to get that out because I'm going to show you a little trick here in just a minute. Okay, that's out. Now I'm going to go and press this really quickly, and when I come back I'm going to show you something that's really going to help you not get nice flat seams. Okay, so I pressed those two pieces and I've joined them here. Let me show you what's special about what we're doing today. We're doing something called nesting the seams, and on this you can see that these two pieces are joined and the seam is pressed going this way. And these two pieces are pressed and the seam is going that way. So we can join those up. I think you can see that right in there, so that they match together perfectly. And then you have half of the bulk on one side and half of the bulk on the other. And when they're sewn together, it will lay as flat as that seam can lay. So we're going to pin this, or use some clips here going down, and I'm going to put a pin here and here, and we're going to sew it, and I'll show you the result. Okay, it is still pretty bulky in the middle because you've got so many layers of fabric. But now you can see it's all there together, and when we open it up, all the seams meet perfectly in the middle and you have less bulk. Now what you do in this case is you're going to open that seam when you press it, and then that will split the bulk on two sides. We can take this one step further by spinning these seams. And to spin these seams, we're going to come in and remove just a couple of stitches here. We need to get the rest of this paper out of here. Okay, that was a little more complicated than it needed to be because we had all that paper in it, being a paper piece, foundation paper piecing. But we were able to do that. And what we did was come in here and we clipped back the seam just a little bit so that we could force that seam to lay down flat. And that one there is still not quite flat. But what you do is you kind of splay that seam out, and you have to cut the seam in the seam allowance so that the last stitch is right there where everything joins up. But we can do that, and now we have a really nice flat block, and you can see that all of the points here came together just perfectly. And that is our block, Borrow and Lend. And as I said, this is the last block that we're making for this project. So when you join us next time, we're going to start working on sashing and trimming for this quilt top, so then we can move along and get it all fixed up and ready to be done. This is one that I do want to finish before the end of the year. So again, this is block number 10, Borrow and Lend. We used a variety of our fabrics on that. I think it turned out really cute. I think it came together with all of its seams just perfectly. I'm very happy about that, and it's very square. I don't know if you've noticed that. If you enjoyed today's content in the video, you learned something from it, or you just enjoyed spending time with us, give us a thumbs up and be sure to share the video and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.